Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. We have lots to talk about. We still have a Stanley Cup Final alive and well. Game 6 tonight. We'll talk about that later in the show. Russ, start us off with the pre-show.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the NFL. Not so much game action, but what they're always trying to portray to the public. You know, we're for social justice. Okay. You know, they've done a little better lately. We are the number one sport in America. Okay. They're doing a good job with COVID-19 so far, except with their coaches and coaching staff. And I don't understand why it's so hard to wear a mask, but I think it's kind of sad that a league now is levying, forgetting about fines because all the coaches make too much money. They are now going to start suspending and taking away draft picks if these coaches are so brazen to not wear a mask right. And nothing portrayed it better than a half-awake Jerry Jones up in the suite having his mask down at his chin. Again, these are the kinds of things that Roger Goodell should not want the public to see. And right now, that's what they're portraying, and they look like idiots. And it's a lot of the coaches. It's not just one or two. I'm not going to pick anybody out because it's a lot of them.
Well, I don't know if they're going to fine or if they're going to take draft picks away from an owner who does it. But, yeah, I mean, the coaches – I mean, it was blatant, Russ. I can't remember I think it was Sean Payton, and there was one other coach that had it hanging around their neck, didn't even put – Pete Carroll was taking it off and on.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, if we have to wear it to go into a supermarket for an hour – they can put it on for a couple hours. It's not that big of a deal.
It's not. I mean, I played a whole softball game with it. It's not.
I mean, I do wonder again in terms of this versus other sports, in terms of especially with everything radioed in, if there's been concern of things being muffled, that could be a part of it. I do think, but again, let me finish, Russ. Let me finish.
Sorry.
But at the end of the day, we know at this point now, okay, project your voice a little more, enunciate if you need to. You don't have to worry about crowd noise. I mean, the crowd noise is, if it's limited, it's pretty low level. It's not like you're in a large stadium. So in that respect, unless they're having issues with regards to the feed and everything with regards to the radio feed, and even then, you just have to communicate. You just have to project a bit more than you normally do. So, yeah, I don't think there's any real reason or excuse. And Jones being asleep in the press box, I guess last night after watching his team getting waxed, and he needed a good snooze.
Yeah, I was gonna say asleep out of self-defense, but I mean, hey, let's just say this: the NFL has not eliminated the possibility of ties like the NHL has, and I was a little surprised. And I didn't see a bit of that game, Anthony. So you have to tell me.
I watched it. I'll let Anthony go first, but I have a thought on it. Go ahead.
It was worse than JV high school football, that game. Simple as that. I cannot describe it any other way. If I'm watching other games at night, I'm looking at it and going, seeing what this Eagles-Bengals game is. Again, we're looking at an Eagles team that's now three seasons removed from a Super Bowl year where they were, a well-oiled machine to, and I get the whole, they are, the team is what, in terms of not having a preseason, only limited certain things that you could do when you're in camp in terms of contact. But the Eagles just seem absolutely just, and the Bengals as well, look absolutely just ill prepared to play a football game yesterday.
Yeah.
It was, the Eagles are their own special mess right now. And the Bengals are the Bengals at the end of the day. They're just starting off with Joe Burrow, and he's getting, we've got two quarterbacks that I thought were completely, their offensive line was betraying them, but at the same time they were making poor decisions. But Burrow's got an excuse. He's a first-year quarterback. Carson Wentz doesn't.
Right.
So needless to say, the only thing that looks like that was, again, to me, the best description of what this was watching JV football in their first game of the season.
Here's the thing that I don't get. If you're a coach and you're 0-2 and you're lining up for a 59-yard field goal, even with a 5-yard penalty, there's only 19 seconds to go in the game, and there are no timeouts for the opposition and a rookie quarterback. Why aren't you trying to go?
And he said that. He said that today in press conference. He said,
yeah, but he didn't say it yesterday.
No, not yesterday, but now he thought about it today, and it's like.
But he should have thought about it yesterday. That's my point.
You would think. And again, I don't know if it was a case of if he felt that Elliott couldn't make that shot from that distance and was worried about a return. You are going to have a guy back there who's going to try to catch the ball. If it's short, you're going to get a return. And what happens if, they break one?
But a tie does you nothing. You're better off
No,
going.
listen, at the end of the day, I agree. A tie does them nothing. But here's the thing: Dallas loses last night. They're still only a half game off the NFC.
Yeah, I was gonna say that great.
We're in the second edition of NFC Least this year.
Yeah, the great NFC East, where the 1 and 2 Washington Football Club is in first place. Let me just say this now. People should probably or will probably say to me, like other people on my social media yesterday, basically telling me to shut up when it came to the Bills game yesterday. And it's like, okay, they're up 21-3 or 28-3.
You were talking to me on the phone when they were up.
They're dominating the LA Rams. They get screwed on a call which should not have been an interception. Should have been a reception by one of their tight ends. It was sort of basically he caught the ball, he comes down. It was a jump ball, to use the NBA analogy, and they gave LA the interception. LA comes back from 28-3 down and leads 32-28 before the Bills come back and score with 15 seconds left to go in the fourth quarter. And I'm saying, obviously, this team, in spite of the fact that they're 3-0, have not learned any of the lessons after that major choke job against Houston in the playoffs last year, because Josh Allen did the same play a couple times where it's 1st and 10 and gets sacked for 22 yards and things like that. And I'm like, they blew this lead, and I says, well, and I'm getting responses like, no, they didn't. They won the game. It says they were up 28-3 and they were down 32-28. They blew the lead. They just ended up winning the game. Right. What am I missing here? They had a 25-point lead and blew it. They were just lucky.
The positive is Josh Allen threw a touchdown to win the game. The negative is their defense let them back in the game.
Right, and their defense has played terrible, and
that's a valid point by you, because again, you're looking past the regular season right now because the Bills can make the playoffs, but you kind of want more than what they did last year in the playoffs, and so far they're not showing that.
Right. So, all right, we'll do our intro here, and hopefully Anthony will hear this and come back. And
I will do it for him.
Okay. I'm here.
Okay. All right. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, September 28th, 2020.
I'm Anthony Majoni from Sunrise Philly Magazine.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, just start with this just briefly, because you have to acknowledge a special date in hockey history. Today is, it was 1972, so that is 48 years, the 48th anniversary of the infamous, or to the Russians it's infamous, to Team Canada it's a very good date, a very good anniversary. The Game 8 of the Canada-Russia series with Paul Henderson scoring the famous goal that we've seen many a time. Russ, I remember, and I was 5 years old, I remember watching it because my brother was watching it. But even if you didn't watch it, even if you saw it in replays and things like that over the years, it's, other than Eruzioni's goal, that's probably the most consequential goal in hockey history, possibly.
Yeah, I think, that one, the Bobby Orr one, those are all right up there. I didn't watch the game. I was old enough to, but I didn't get it. I didn't live near the border like you, so it wasn't being played. I don't even think I read about it in the paper. I probably found out about it sometime after, whether it was via the Hockey News or something else like that, Hockey Digest, probably, because I don't even think I was getting the Hockey News. And so I think that's probably, how I found out. It was interesting, though, because for all the years, I finally interviewed Paul Henderson like 2 years ago. And I got to tell you, this guy is just a great ambassador for the sport. Just a great guy. He doesn't try and live off that one goal. He was a very good player in the WHA, but he's really kind of like a worldly guy, a fun guy to talk to. And so I think it's nice to celebrate him every year. He should be in the Hockey Hall of Fame. He's not. They're just not going to put him in because too much emphasis on the NHL. And so that's going to hurt him. But at the end of the day, he really is a big name in hockey, and, he deserves this.
Yeah, for me, in terms of, obviously, he was too, not born in that era, but, obviously all the stories and some of the history that is obviously well chronicled as to the series. As a kid, I still saw, brought up on 7-game series, hearing about a Game 8 was one of the stranger
Yeah.
One of the stranger things that I had
Right.
witnessed and realizing how that could happen. But it's an iconic moment. There's no question about it. It's one of the rare moments where we've seen that Soviet Red Army team not end up victorious. I mean, we comment with the Olympics and everything else, and we all remember, at least with Team USA, the following Olympics in '84, the Soviet team absolutely dominated. That's usually what happened,
Right.
from the '70s in the Olympics between the '70s and the '80s, and again, a remarkable moment in history. And again, I don't think I can really fill in much more than what Russ has already said with regards to Paul Henderson. So it's important for us to market and acknowledge it.
I was just going to say the Game 8 thing. I think Mike knows this too. They had that in early World Series too, like in the early 1900s.
Actually, it was 9. They went 9.
And then again, I think it was just to sell more tickets.
Oh yeah, it was definitely to sell more.
I mean, we're talking, early 1900s. I mean, everything's kind of wild and not exactly, like we
didn't think about the tie aspect. They were just thinking we could add on games and get more tickets.
Right. The infamous 1919 World Series was a 9-game series, and it ended in 8. So it's a little bizarre. And I was while you guys were talking, I was looking around. I had an old magazine. It was like a photo magazine of the series, and I also somewhere in the house have an old VHS copy of a series they put out, a documentary they put out on that series. And I still love the Bobby Clark video with the sort of that wry smile when he talks about breaking Harlamov's ankle.
And in reality, he didn't. That's the thing. It's very much hyped up, and that's the thing. I mean, even in recent years, and certainly it adds to the drama of it and everything else. But I also know for a fact it was a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And
that's the one thing I do know about that series from a Flyers perspective. So.
And the thing is, I'm just finding that the thing is that was not the best team that Canada could put out because Orr was hurt. So he couldn't play. You had guys like I think it was Gary Bergman and Bill White playing on their defense. Like Jules Drouin, J.P. Parise were playing support. Guys like Rick Martin and Gilbert Perreault went back to the U.S. along with Marcel Dion went back to Canada because they weren't playing.
They had a couple of the great Rangers there that in '72 they were like at the height of their game and made it to the Stanley Cup that year. And Espo was amazing. I mean, you had Espo.
And the WHA was in a factor there because Bobby Hull was in the WHA, so he didn't play in it. And I think the WHA played the Russians in a separate series. So all those factors. So it wasn't you could use it as an excuse, but I mean it was just.
That's how I probably found out about the series because Boston was close, even though Rangers were in it too. Yep. Espo was so outspoken that I think he did make the papers.
Yeah, and just listening to Expo,
I know.
Just listening to Espo talk, and I've seen, like after the game, I think in Vancouver, where he essentially laid down the gauntlet, hearing how sort of erudite he was at that point, and then listening to him doing color commentary on the Tampa Bay Lightning broadcast, it's like night and day. He's moaning and groaning. Oh, come on, Cooch.
He knows his. Listen, I will say this about Espo. Espo usually is pretty. He's able to read a crowd and able to try to give the crowd what they want.
Actually, the best thing you could ever do, and this happened to me just once, and it's probably happened a few times over the years, if you're ever at a collectible show and you could have Phil and Tony there at the same time, it's actually magic because that's the way they sort of feed off each other is unbelievable. And I got to witness that once. And
Italian brothers, baby. Italian brothers.
It really is. It's
St. Marie. All right.
So they're a lot of fun when they're together.
Let's talk the big news of the weekend. Besides the Stanley Cup Final, like I said, we're going to save that until Act joins us or later in the show. The curious trade, and it's not so curious because you expected the Rangers to try to do something to open up.
I talked about him getting traded, just got the wrong team.
Right, and Mark Stahl gets traded to the Detroit Red Wings. Along with a 2021 second-round pick for, quote, future considerations, which is basically nothing.
I think it'll turn into a player.
I don't know if it'll be a player. Maybe it'll be
somebody that the Red Wings will want to cut or something and call the Rangers and say, yeah, you want them.
But the gist of this deal was the $5.7 million cap hit of Stahl. 100% of that goes to Detroit. Now, okay, Russ, from the Rangers' perspective, they cleared that cap space. What are they going to do with that cap space?
Well, they're going to make an offer to D'Angelo. I don't know if it'll be 3 years or 5 years. My sense is it should be 3 years, but maybe they'll give him 5. I don't know, but I think that's the first thing they're going to do. They're still going to wait and see what's going to happen with Lundqvist, which I think it's good. Now this gives them room to let that situation breathe because we don't know. Like in 2 weeks, Lundqvist may say, you know what, I'm good. I'm going to retire and let me have my retirement speech and do that. Or he might go to them and say, I want to be traded. Or he might just say, hey, I'll see you at training camp. And they can't do a damn thing about it unless they buy him out. And I don't know if they're going to do that because it would be like the Yankees buying out Derek Jeter. It would create a lot of animosity. Lundqvist would take it like a man. He would be like, hey, you know what? I get it and whatever. But I'm telling you, there would be bad feelings if they do that. And it's easy for the fans to say, oh, yeah, just buy him out. But if you want this guy in your organization someday or at least want him to come back every few years so you can have a night for him so you can make extra money, you got to think about those things.
Perla sounds like she's upset.
Perla's got opinions on this topic here.
He does.
So I mean, Russ is right, Anthony, that now the Rangers have a little breathing space, but that's up until October the 8th, which is, I think, the window, the end of the buyout window. They're going to have to make a decision on whether they're going to buy out Lundqvist or whether they're going to buy out Brendan Smith. Now, they have $20 million in cap space right now, but they've got to re-sign Georgiev. They got to re-sign D'Angelo. They have to decide what they're going to do with Ryan Strome. They may want to get somebody who, and this won't affect the cap this year, but players who have a year left on their ELCs like Ryan Lindgren or Cheadle or Howden, get them extended. But for the here and the now, I mean, now they have a little bit of space, but they don't have a lot of time.
No, they don't. I think it's going to be interesting to see the decision that they do make. I think after this trade, and I'm sure they're in communication with Hank with regards to what they, if they've kind of set an arbitrary deadline of saying, hey, we have to make a decision with this regard. Are you going to make a decision? And again, we've heard enough of the reports about the fact that, some of the players said he's definitely played his last game. We heard those reports. So what's that?
Or really, it's like the last as a Ranger.
Last as a Ranger, exactly. But again, he has to kind of make a decision or whether or not Gorton's able to thread the needle and get him somewhere that he would want to be if he's not going to play. Got a spotted lanternfly jumping on my leg here, so I had to go and get it off. One more time, the camera's going to go dark, and I'm going to go kill it.
No, you're supposed to kill it because they're not native.
No, I know. I'm going to kill it. Just bounced off into the grass.
The perils of outdoor webcasting.
Yep, exactly. Let me go inside in a second.
The one hurdle here that nobody really realizes with the Rangers is when they bought out Shattenkirk, the cap hit this year is over $6 million because it was all bonuses, Russ. So that contract has really come back to bite them in the ass.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question it has, and it's created dead cap space. And again, if you buy out Lundqvist, you're going to have more dead cap space,
right.
And that is something like right now the Rangers are flush with cash, but they're not going to be for long, and that's where they have to make this decision. And that's why if it gets strung along and let's say the Rangers don't buy him out, then their best move is to go in with the 3 goalies again. They did it last year. It didn't hurt their season, and they could do it again. And you know what? And then maybe he'll want to get dealt at the deadline when the most of the school year is done for his son. I mean, I think that's, another factor where, his kid's in school and, hey, then most of the school year is over, so then maybe he would be okay with taking a run somewhere else before hanging it up.
And the interesting thing from the Detroit perspective, they're not going to buy out Stahl.
Hold on, I got breaking news.
Okay.
So it looks like I'm basically translating an article from Sport 10, but it looks like Joel Lundqvist said Henrik's not coming.
Okay.
Not coming to Sweden.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
So that means retirement or he's playing for another NHL team if they don't do buy him out.
So he's not going to Sweden. That's what Joel Lundqvist is reporting.
I can't see him retiring and just giving up five. I know he's made millions.
Yeah. Oh, he can make endorsements. I mean, I don't
know about that much.
Yeah, 5
No, but he doesn't live that high on the hog. Again, he's got a house in Sweden. He's got a nice place in the city. But people see him. He walks around like any other New Yorker with his kid and goes food shopping. You know, he doesn't have he doesn't have a. Maybe he spends a lot on his clothes, but it's not like he's spending a lot on other things.
I mean, he's from Europe. I expect him to be spending a lot of money on his clothes.
Yeah, he's obviously going to D'Agostino's instead of Whole Foods. Okay, but from
a perspective, yeah.
I could tell you for sure. I know somebody. A good friend of mine ran the supermarket that he does go into, and I won't say what it is, but it's a good supermarket.
Okay. On the Detroit side here, I mean, they're not going to buy Stahl out. That it's clear that they brought him in, and I was telling you guys this on when we heard about the trade when we did Off the Post on the weekend, that Stahl is a really good guy to be sort of a coach on the ice with their young defensemen like Philip Roenick or Mort Seider, who played in the AHL last year. So, you know, Yzerman is wisely spending his cap space for a veteran guy who can be a good example. But he hasn't ruled out, and I'm just going to read the quote here quickly from after the trade was made. Yzerman said, "We're still in a position to do more trades. We have cap space. We have roster spots to fill, so we have to be careful. You can get to the cap very quickly, but we're in a position to potentially do future deals like this if they come along." Meaning, if I'm getting paid to take players on, like getting a second-round pick, he's open for business, and that is the smart thing to do. You've got cap space. If it's a 1-year thing and you're going to go to teams that are up against it, like Vegas or Toronto or other teams, you can say, you know, I'm here. It's a Bank of Yzerman.
No. But the difference is, and Kevin did point this out, he'll make those deals if he could get some use out of the player, like he will Mark Stahl. He is not going to take an affirmed player.
Yeah, you're not gonna have a Pronger / Datsuk situation where you're taking on a guy like that just for dead space.
But I think you would take a Paul Stastny or an Alec Martinez.
Yeah, he might do that.
Yeah, I mean, because then he can flip that player at the deadline and get paid twice. Get paid to take him and get paid to trade him. So I mean, that just makes sense. I mean, Detroit is so bereft of I mean, they're in a bad situation. They've got some bad contracts. They're starting to rebuild. They've got some good youngsters like Veleno, like Seider, like Zadina, but I think they need more assets. And this is just smart business. If you're getting a draft pick to take somebody on, and then you potentially get a draft pick to flip the guy out, why the hell wouldn't you do that?
No, it's good business, especially as you're trying to as you are trying to slowly transition the Red Wings into a winning situation within a 2 years or so. Which again, we're looking at least probably a couple years.
Yeah,
logically that the Red Wings would be back in any kind of ascendancy, and even then you got to be careful. You can't assume anything. Sometimes when you bottom out, it takes a little longer than that. But I do trust Yzerman's acumen, his time in Tampa. Makes me obviously trust he knows what he's doing in that area, and that I think again I like the Stahl deal from the Red Wings perspective in that it's stabilized. Again, Stahl is who he is at this point. We have to there has to be reasonable expectations with regards to him, but he is on it's the last year of his deal, right, Russ?
Yeah,
this year, so it's a perfect pickup. And again, not going to get a lot in return at the deadline if you deal him, but at the same time, he can as you said, Hronek. Several of the other defensemen.
Oh, really, Seider. He can help Seider be.
Seider's probably the guy that, if you look at physically, certainly they're similar. There's similar attributes. But Seider might be even faster than Stahl is. And the fact that, of course, I'm talking about it in the younger age of his career.
No, even at the younger age, he's better offensively too, but does have that physical side, and Stahl does know how to play defense. You got to get that.
And if Stahl has enough left in the tank that he could help a playoff team at the end, before the deadline, they have the cap space to eat 50% of his salary, and again, then they could trade him and bring and get an asset for him there if they don't have it. And Yzerman's. He needs to fill a lot of roster spaces. He just re-signed Sam Gagner on a 2-year deal for, I think, under $1 million. Sam Gagner is a good guy. He's had a pretty decent NHL career. He's a body, but he's a skilled guy. So it's not a bad move to have him take care of a roster spot.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to point out for all the Twitter bashing that in 2013, of all people, like Kimmo Timonen shot Mark Stahl in the eye accidentally, and that's what hurt his career. But Stahl's had a better career than Brian Berard had with his eye injury, and you have to give him credit for what he's been able to do after that.
Yeah.
Guys.
Hey, Yak.
Okay. So we saved the Cup final stuff till the end of the show. We talked about the Mark Stahl deal. If you have anything on that,
I got something else though that I just wrote about that's pretty big.
Go ahead.
So, great to see you, Anthony. Thanks for being.
My pleasure, Rick. Yeah.
Okay, so I talked to a source today about what happens next in the NHL. Because this is one of the guys at the league, and this is one of the things he knows best. Mm-hmm. And his quote, I wrote it in my blog. I thought it was fascinating. Right, you're gonna like this. I was really surprised at how down he was about the next season. And even though he said, we can get this thing done, we're going to get it done. He's like, the amount of energy that is going into this is like off the charts, to the point where his quote was, the playoff bubbles were incredible undertakings and the NHL hit it out of the park. But what's coming next will make what they just did feel like they just threw a youth hockey tournament. Says the 2021 season has all the sorts of disasters circling, and there are people at the league who are working various scenarios constantly. Everything is being considered. There could be changes made in the salary cap for this season and next season even. Ways certain money can be relieved, different things. A lot out there. I will let you know when the concepts become more than just conceptual. The NHL is also appealing to state and national governments in the U.S. and Canada to help the teams out as well. That sounds like something that may need to happen before we get playing without fans, and could push the start date back into January.
Well, that is a plea. That is a begging to Justin Trudeau to drop the Canada-U.S. border, because we know that the AHL, the CHL, who have franchises in both the U.S. and Canada, they won't start until that cessation has been lifted. And if they don't lift it, then I don't think you can have a Canadian division where the 7 Canadian teams play 82 games against each other.
It's not just that though. It's also they're also appealing to Cuomo for the Sabres, the Islanders, and the Rangers. Governor,
right. They can't play. They couldn't play in arena. Well,
not about playing, about helping them financially. Like we're talking about like bailouts of teams. Like that was the discussion we were having.
Especially if we're talking about the possibility that we are looking at empty arenas to start the season.
Right.
That's one of the biggest things. There's no revenue. There's not enough revenue coming in.
Yeah.
You said 4 teams could fold or have to move if certain things aren't done.
Yeah, there's no question. There's very few teams whose ownership owns the building they're in.
Right.
But still, even when you do, there's still some cost there that you still.
They are set. The NHL is set up to pay salaries based on people being in the seats. That's the way it goes, right? So it's that's the reality of everything, right? So to them, that's the only thing we can say.
They're the most dependent on gate than any professional.
Oh yeah, completely. But what was interesting is they are apparently heavy right now in discussions with a lot of state governors in the United States about, and they're not alone. Like when I talked to him, I said, "Well, is it just you, or is it like?" And he's like, "No, it's like what's happening is like, say in Philadelphia, the Eagles, Flyers, Sixers, Phillies are all going together to the state government saying, what can you do for us for a year, basically,
right?
And saying that we need, and then the whole question comes up like." Think about what they're asking for. They're asking for like them to get money to pay millions of dollars to athletes. That becomes a really, really sketchy issue very fast with people.
I don't know if they're these state governments are have billions of dollars in deficits because of unemployment and things of that. I think that teams owned by billionaires are barking up the wrong tree if they're expecting state and federal governments to bail them out.
I don't know about that, Mike. I think it's this. You're looking at it strictly from that standpoint, and I think you have to look at it from the standpoint that if this thing hits again and the average person's going to be sitting at home and really all they can do is watch TV or work at home,
right?
Then these guys become more vital in their existence because they are creating an outlet for people to sort of forget about their troubles for a while, and that goes differently than, hey, these guys make a lot of money, let the billionaire take care of it.
There's a lot of sports fans there are a lot of I have 2 groups of friends, right? I have my sports friends and I have my music friends. And and then I have my friends.
Oh, and then there's me. Then there's a guy.
And then there's you, Russ. And then, but then there's also like my friends who are.
And then I'm like at the bottom of the rung because I'm his employee.
Oh my God! It always is about you, Mike. It's always got to be about you. No, the reality is, and I also have my friends who are like parents on the soccer team of my daughter. And there's different kinds of, and I call them sports friends because they're still into sports. But I have hockey friends of mine and artist friends of mine that want nothing to do with sports, that don't even know. I was explaining to somebody the other day that they had 4 downs in football to get 10 yards. Like, wow. That was just 2 days ago. I have people like that have been friends of mine for years. That's how little they are into this, And for those people to sit there and there's more of those people than you think. I mean, we don't, where we are, we expect.
Monet is, and I could point out a Monet. I mean, come on, people.
I know, but where we are, we kind of think that everybody has some kind of great sports thing, and they just don't, And if I'm one of those people, and if I went to that friend now and I said, hey, and it's a guy, I'm like, what's going to happen is the government's going to give money to the Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers. You're going to be pissed off. Like that's
right. That's what I'm saying.
Not fly.
Yeah, that won't. And that's.
I mean, these are politicians. Remember, they're worried about getting votes when they're up for election. So I mean, they may give these teams a tax break or tax push ahead for a year or something like that. But they're not going to give them millions of dollars to keep. I'll grant your point about yes. I mean, and believe me, I'm a hockey writer. I want them to play. I want sports. I'm a sports fan. I want them to play. But when you've got people who are not getting, who still after 4 or 5 months haven't gotten their pandemic unemployment because the state that they're in is not processing.
Or their PPP loans, Mike. They're
basically saying, screw sports. I want my money.
I know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there, and it is it's very messed up, and the whole thing. So I don't think any of those Philadelphia teams are in danger of folding. So I wonder, we're going to be talking about teams is the Panthers and even Lightning, I was told, could be in trouble. And the Lightning are about to win the Stanley Cup. Financially, Lightning do really great in seats, right? But they have among the cheapest tickets out there too. Yeah. When they haven't had cheap tickets, they've struggled. I mean, I remember talking to Warren Coolis when they were trying to sell normal price tickets down there and they couldn't. And, and they were a pretty good team then too. They weren't a great team, but they were a good enough team. So the reality,
what the other part of this equation is, and Mike certainly knows this, when these teams are connected in business with a city, there is a certain amount of money that the city will make and the state will make off of these teams. If these teams all of a sudden go dark, it's easy to say, the state's broke. They don't have any money. Well, they'll be worse off if they don't have these teams and the revenue coming from them too.
But if you take the fans out, Russ, that money that the states are making is minimized as well. That money, they can still make the money. Okay, that maybe a team's flying in and staying here in the hotel, and then they're taxing the players who are playing here, and there's that money. Right. But that's not a lot of money.
No,
compared to what the other money that's brought in, like the revenue that over in Philly that by the bars get for the team and all that revenue if the game's on. Well, it's different, so there's a lot. There are so many different aspects of this, but it was really kind of enlightening and disconcerting to hear him talk, and at the same time, a little bit obvious. It was a little bit of obviousness.
I think at the end of the day, we're talking about the reality. I think we've all been very excited and have greatly enjoyed this tournament. No question. I think it's for hockey fans, and I think it's sports fans in general. It's given them a mental psychological lift, but we do have the reality of the situation right now. And people, and as much as we want escapism, there's hard realities right now that that have to be addressed. And what your source in this case is, I think, doing a great job here in delivering that message through you.
He wanted to get that out. And he wanted me to write this, and he's like, "You got to write this." And the other thing, and I was trying to write as fast as I could so I can get in here, and it's the Jewish holiday, and we're going to services for my wife's Jewish and all that stuff. But I wanted to get everything together, and he made a lot of other points as well that were really interesting, and I just lost my train of thought. But there's one of them was really fascinating. And now go ahead, Mike. I'm going to think about what I was just saying.
Okay, go ahead. But no, I mean, the news came out over the weekend. Elliot Friedman reported that the cost of the bubble in Edmonton and Toronto was between $75 and $90 million. Now, that was a necessity for the league because I believe with the television contract, they could have made up to $400 million in terms of advertising and
Right.
TV content. And they needed to do that because if they didn't do that, then the escrow would have blown up unbelievably. I don't know where the NHL, and I'm not disputing what your source said on this. But the thing is, if you agree to something in a CBA, all of a sudden, if you're going to come in at the 11th hour and realize that, say, okay, well, half of the teams in the league are not going to come anywhere close to 81.5. They're going to be budgeted at 65 to 70 million.
Well, here's what I was told about that, Mike. I brought that up because I brought up the same exact thing. I'm like, didn't you guys just sign a CBA? Like, you just did this, right, for the salary cap and everything like that. And he said, yeah, but we did it under the guise of like, let's sign the CBA as if everything's fine. And then we will sit down and talk to each other when we have to make adjustments when it's not, because they wanted to have a CBA that went for long enough that they would still be going. And this is the other thing I was going to say was this, the vaccine thing and all that stuff, you sit back and you say, okay, the vaccine, just because we have a vaccine and, whenever we all get that vaccine or whatever, there is still going to be a definite curve as to when people are comfortable enough to watch sports indoors again.
Sure,
that's just going to be the reality. So even if you've been vaccinated, even if this and that, it's going to be. I mean, StubHub's going to have a lot of cheap tickets on there. Okay, people, season ticket holders. Season ticket holders are going to drop. That's going to happen. And
you have to factor in a lot of the anti-vaxxers out there that are not going to want to get a vaccine. So it's like, I mean, that's going to be a factor as well. And
you're going to have to have. You're going to have like some kind of document saying like. Right, you got vaccinated to enter the arena. That could be possible.
I think that's probably going to be the case to cross the border. I'll get the vaccine if I have to go into Canada.
Right. I can see us getting something embedded into our driver's licenses or something like that. Like some kind of thing that we can scan. That
Real ID 2.0.
I know we're getting into Revelations like Wrath of God stuff here, but like the beast scanning stuff on our arms, but at the same time, I could really see okay, you've been vaccinated. Okay, that goes on your record now. So when my driver's license is scanned, it says that's something that comes up. It's like, this guy's been vaccinated.
They're better off giving you a vaccine bracelet and just say wear it for the next few months.
Yeah, or something. I mean, they are, but then people could fake that. There's all kinds of things that happen, right? So they're going to have to be super careful. And the reality is, we're not going to eliminate this thing ever. It's going to be out there for always, and that's fine. We're going to learn how to take care of our people who are in danger. That's true. That's good too. But I talked to a doctor the other day who's like, he's like, yeah, we usually have like something like, by this time he's about 250 for the month of September, like 250 strep throat cases that come through, just like on an average year. We all, like Anthony, how many times your kid's been checked for strep throat, right? Every freaking day. He said this 250 this year we've had 10. And like, that's pretty crazy. And he's like, but these masks aren't just designed to protect one thing. He's like, the masks are protecting you from all these things. So like, the fact is, like, you're not going to get strep throat from somebody either. But then what happens is eventually your immunity is messed up, and when we take the masks off, suddenly everybody could be getting strep throat all at once, because that's like a bam too. So like he was telling me this.
Well, like, whoa. You make a good point, Eck. I mean, something that. And again, if you don't like wearing a mask, then you could close your ears to me. But there have been other cities in the world that have been wearing masks for years just because of that, because they have a lot of population and people don't want to get sick. And a lot of them have been doing that. And you know what? We may have to do that for a few years.
I think that's going to be a reality. I think
we've seen it in China. And part of it, of course, is just the environmental situation that's there as well, in addition to COVID. Right. So we've been seeing that for at least half the last decade, probably longer.
Yeah,
that's why I got.
I had the first really crazy funny mask story the other day. It's like 6 a.m. I'm at Wawa because we're going somewhere, and I had to go get the gas or whatever before we left to drive to look. We're looking at puppies in New Jersey. So anyway, I'm getting up early in the morning to do this. I get to Wawa, and this person, I pull into a like 2.5. We're coming into a parking spot at the same time, and I wave this woman in. I'm like, you can have the spot, whatever. And she waves back, thanks. I'm thinking she just says thanks. It turns out like it's some mother from the soccer team, but everybody we both had masks on. So like later she wrote on Facebook, hey man, hey, thanks for not acknowledging me at all today. I'm like, what's it? I'm like, how many people do you see now on a daily basis that you don't know you saw? Like, there's so many. It's just funny. That was just a funny thing. But masks are usually important. Obviously, we know that. That's like, to me, it's such a no-brainer that it's unbelievable that it's even a discussion.
That's why I got my designer New York Yankees mask.
Yeah. So, there you go. Right. That's why I made my Bernie Parent mask.
Who, by the way, I looked up the Yankees' revenue to New York in 2019, and it was $683 million. Now the city doesn't get all of that, but that's what they raked in. So the city gets a percentage of that. That's big time. That's a sizable amount.
It's a huge amount. So, I mean, this to me is like, so that is something. So like really, the NHL is up. This bubble thing was pretty easy. Like we all sat there. In March and said, okay, what could they do? They could do a tournament, and put two teams. And it was pretty obvious. Like the whole thing kind of like wrote itself, right? It was like, this is the best way to do it.
But here's
the matter of 16 versus 24 teams was like the biggest decision that anybody had to make, and how those playoff teams were going to get in. But all that was like,
but here's the
reality.
Now
what you're talking about. That was like such child's play compared to what they're about to do.
But here's the reality, Yak. This bubble will never happen again. Not only because of the things that were covered in that Emily Kaplan Wyshynski piece, but things like this. Rick Bowness was just asked, "What are you going to miss about bubble life?" He says, "Not one bit. They will never do this."
Follow up by John Cooper as well. John Cooper says the best part about this thing is when we're all checking out.
Right. So
I talked to I talked to Bill Zito, when he was still with Columbus, and and they lose to Tampa. And he was obviously. I talked to him the night they lost to Tampa. He's like, he's so depressed, and I talked on the phone. He's like, yeah, this sucks. We really thought we lost 3-0 lead. Going through all this stuff, it's just the hockey stuff he's going through. And then the next day, I talked to him when he gets home, and he's like, he texts me the next day when he gets home. He's like, I am so happy. I'm seeing my family, seeing my kids. Yeah. It's like it goes. The emotions of the last 24 hours are insane. He's like, I went from losing to be released from jail to being to seeing. It's like. Mike, I don't think it'll happen again as well. But no, I don't think any of the things that all that stuff that in the Wyshynski article, which is a great article, is fine. I think it'll happen if it has to happen. Put it that way.
No. I
think look at the cost factor. Yeah. The cost was. Elliot Friedman said it was $90 million for the NHL and $170 for the NBA. They can't pay that again.
But you're looking at $400 million in revenue that they got in the other television
playoffs.
So but the reality is listen, you can't do a bubble through the season. You can't. It's just not going to work.
No.
If for some reason next time in March this thing flares up again or whatever, and we're in the same boat, they could do this again. They could do this playoff thing again.
What they're going to do
if they had to.
They're going to follow the MLB and the NFL model.
For now, if they can. See, that it's all you got to throw that out there, Mike. It's like
that's what they might be contacting all these governors and all these municipalities for. Is okay, we need to play these games. We'll even play them without fans, but we need to play these games. So clear the way for us to be able to play them. That's what
they're looking for a bailout. And this is one thing he brought up to me, and I was like, whoa. He's like, the airlines, they've gotten helped out. I'm like, that's a different thing, the airlines. And as a hockey fan, I'm like, yeah, the airlines. But as a person who lives in society, the airlines are a vital to everything type situation, right? So the NHL is not that. The NHL, as much as we love it and much as it's vital to our livelihoods, it's not vital to everybody's livelihood.
Right.
It's not the airlines, it's not the airline industry or the restaurant industry. Those are industries that are totally different, right? So let's move on to Stanley Cup Final, but I just wanted to get that out because I thought it was really interesting.
And after that, there's some other news that we'll talk about because we didn't. We have a minor deal here. The Blackhawks and the Golden Knights have swapped forwards. Brandon Peary for Dylan Sakura. Not a major blockbuster, but
you know what? This is good for Vegas, man. Dylan Sakura can play. Brandon Peary is fool's gold and a good skater, and if he gets hot, he gets you 7 goals in a week, and then he doesn't get anything the rest of the season. Dylan Sakura can play, and I think this is he just
surprising. Yeah, I remember watching him in the playoffs. Sakura, I liked him.
Yeah.
And
that's Peary can play too.
All-around player.
That's a sharp move by Vegas.
It's a really sharp move by both. I think by both teams actually, because I think Perry's good too. I don't think he's
Perry's fast, and if you put him, if you're gonna waste the effort of putting him with Patrick Kane just so you can get points out of him, he could do it. But then it's
Well, Piri's, if he pitches for the Cubs, he'll be a nominee for the Cy Young because he doesn't get any assists.
True.
But yeah, it's not a major deal. I just
it's worth. Obviously, it's worth talking about. So let's get into Game 6 tonight and what we think is going to happen here. And go ahead. I'm going to throw out my thought first off that I just think we're going to see. I think we're going to see Game 7, and I think that, and the reason I say that is because it just fits to this whole story.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole story, this whole bubble story, to everything that's happened, it fits to go to Game 7. It just makes, and we all want. Unless you're Tampa, you want, everybody else wants.
Well, here's my issue, and I want to get everybody's thought on this because I said this to Russ when John Cooper came out and updated everybody on the condition of Steven Stamkos. Yeah. If it was Game 6 and Stamkos had not played in Game 3, don't you think that emotional uplift that would have happened with Stamkos coming in the lineup, that Game 6 would have been the time to do it? Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't.
I think it was an absolutely stupid.
That's a hindsight is 2020 thing. I think that's hindsight is 2020.
I said it before.
I know you did, Russ. Honestly, you did, and you made some great points. And you made a great point in the last game when Dallas came out strong and Tampa came out flat. I agree with you on that, but at the same time, if Stamkos said he was ready, he was skating with the team. He was ready.
I'm of that opinion too. If he feels that he's ready to go, and you can't hold it, you can't. Your team captain. You can't, and you can't hold him out. He's going to play. He's going to play. You may not like it, but Mike. But I think he tried it. He did the best he could. He contributed, and it just did some. And here's the thing: they've gotten through this postseason. You could turn around and use the point. And you could really look at it from both perspectives of, they've gotten through this postseason without him, and have gotten to this point without him.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's very tough for him to not have gotten in there.
Yeah, you got it
at least once, and if he was ready to go, and again, we all forget, Game 3 tends to be a swing game for a series. It's an early swing game in the series, and he contributed to that to their win and ultimately why they're up in the series.
If he doesn't play that game, Dallas might have won the Stanley Cup by now too. It's possible.
We don't know.
I don't know.
At the moment.
We're seeing reports. Fax is having trouble holding his stick, although he did finally skate with the team after doing an optional, but I don't think we're going to see him yet. But here is my worry for Tampa, and I do think this is legit. They have played a lot of hockey, and I think it started to show up late last game. And they've played a ton of overtimes. They've had a lot of mileage. Like Anthony and I we're talking offline. Hedman has had a lot of mileage thrown on him. Yeah. And, this could start to add up against them.
But at this point of the postseason, you're going to have that possibility, Russ. You're in the Stanley Cup Final.
I know.
You probably have had it. Dallas was fortunate. Listen, at the end of the day, Dallas was fortunate enough that they were able to win their series the way they did. But now, Dallas has also had opportunities to get ahead in the series when they had a chance. Game 3 was the one where they got really stomped. Game 3. And then after that, it's been tight since then. So I look at it and I'm like, I'm not at this point now. You almost have to just mentally charge forward, do what you can. But I think Dallas also had some tired legs too.
Yeah,
tired legs, and that game is exhausting.
But I do think I'm going to stick with my pick. I said Tampa in 7. I do think I think Dallas can sneak one more out of this for sure. But I do think Tampa will be able to close the series.
Yeah, and in the last 2 games, just to illustrate that point, in the last 2 games, Hedman 28 minutes and 36 minutes. That's
but again, you're in a double over. You're in a single overtime game and a double overtime game.
In 24 hours though, it needed that.
You have 2
and Heiskanen and add to the mix there. Then from Dallas's side. What are Heiskanen's minutes?
Yeah, but
he's never had to play this amount of minutes and play this late into his season.
Yeah, but
Klingberg can split up a lot of those minutes where Hedman can't. There's no.
But Sergachev also I think this is where they need to. But Sergachev has played. He hasn't played as much, and this is where now Tampa's got to unleash him a bit more. They got to unleash him a bit more. He's played well in this series, Sergachev. He has. Now they got to really lean on him a lot more, I think, in this series. Because he's the one guy, physical attribute-wise, skill level-wise, that can match the parent, a Heiskanen, Klingberg situation.
Now, Eck, I wanted to mention, when I was at the Winter Classic in Dallas, fans were sort of uneasy and not liking Corey Perry, right? And then
I know, isn't that funny?
And he took a stupid penalty in the Winter Classic game, and I remember some boos raining down.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it's unbelievable the transformation that has happened with him. Even if it's just for a short amount of time, he was dominant in the last game. It was unbelievable.
You know what it is? It's crazy. It's just like we always sit there and say that teams are going out and trading for players who have playoff experience, and it's like, what does it matter? At the end of the day, like what we're seeing here is how it can matter. Like Corey Perry, they were pissed off at Corey Perry, but he wasn't exactly killing it either, Russ, at that time. So it's like, they had a little bit of reason to be pissed off at him. Right now, though.
Neither was Pavelski during the regular season.
Right. But right now, both of those guys have absolutely, come in and they're seeing this like incredible playoff experience matter, which is like everybody always mocks it.
And it's a unique situation as well. Again, with the tournament set up, it allowed them, probably those older veteran players, to get some, a little bit of, a little bit more of a breath in between. And now, knowing full well, again, it's getting late. We've heard it from Pavelski in the postseason. The bitter pill of that fourth game, and they asked it. Tom Galletti asked him about, setting the record, and he was like, "Had next question."
Yeah.
So this is it for them. They're going to you're getting everything that they've got in the tank.
Victor
a little more than usual because of this unique setup.
Victor Hedman is averaging 3.5 minutes more a game than Sergachev, and on the other side, Heiskanen is virtually the same amount of minutes, a little under 26 minutes per night. Klingberg at 23, Alexiak at 21, and Lindell at almost 25. The difference here is it's almost all on Hedman. Hedman is playing all the power play and first power play and all the matchups. And if it's a penalty, he's out there clearing the front of the net. Whereas Dallas has 4 guys that they split those responsibilities. So it's all on Hedman. He's Superman, but even Superman has his kryptonite.
That's for sure. And and the other thing that can't be like said enough is the last, with the exception of Columbus, last year sweeping the Lightning, the last 2 losses they've had, they were up 3-1 in a series. And it's a crazy thing. So or 3-2. Sorry, they're up 3-2 in a series. Yes, they're up 3-2 in a series. They lost games. So they had chances to eliminate Washington in 17-18, and then in 16-17 they had a chance
second round.
With Boston right before that, and they had 2 chances to actually win both those series and didn't win it. So and then last year, with the sweep of Columbus, there's reasons to think that there's a little bit of fragility to that team. Like they are, and then remember last round. They lost the chance. They lost when the Islanders had a chance. They had a chance to put the Islanders away, and they lost. And then they beat the Islanders eventually, but they did lose that first chance they had to put the Islanders away. So they have shown an inability to kind of put teams away.
They have, especially like this game. Even though I get why you're saying they will win in 7, and they very well can.
Yeah,
I just feel like if they don't win this game, the demons are going to come back for them, and come back in a harsh way, because I think Dallas last game did have a big lift with that. Who knows if it carries over? But at the end of the day, they probably do feel like, hey, we're fortunate now to still be in this. I think Tampa's got the pressure. I do.
But they
do until Game 7, and at which time I think the pressure goes to Dallas, and this is why. Because I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was saying Anthony.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm sorry for interrupting you. But what I'm thinking here is like the pressure, Dallas. This is like. I was talking to Kevin Allen the other day about like NHL one-hit wonders, and I'm not saying that Dallas is one of them, like the Flyers in 2010, like teams that get there once. Because you always say, your team has to get there and lose first, and then they'll win. But there's a lot of times teams get there and lose, and they don't end up with. They don't make it. They don't. So like there's these one-hit wonder NHL teams, right? Dallas is in a way is a little bit like that, right? So because do we think Dallas is going to be back here again next year for sure? The Western Conference is pretty damn good.
No, I think this year is the result of getting so close last year, and you're right, they may not get any closer again.
Yeah,
and this might be it. So therefore, if you get to Game 7 with a chance to win it, Tampa's looking back, and that Tampa team, they're going to have to make salary and things, stuff like that. But they're still going to be a team that could do this again.
Well, maybe, but it's going to be a different team because you're talking about them having to open up money for Cirelli, for Sergachev. That probably means that Tyler Johnson is gone, that one of Killorn or Palat might be gone, and you don't know what kind of effect that's going to have on the chemistry of that team.
Right.
So, and plus they're going to have half a defense that's completely different too, because Shattenkirk is a free agent, Shen is a free agent, Bogosian's a free agent. There's a lot of changeover.
Yeah, this is going to be Nash losing Wayne Rogers. That's what it's going to be like.
McLean Stevenson.
No, he wasn't as important, Mike. Come on.
I want to get to one rumor, okay? Because I really don't. I'm sorry for not getting to more rumors today. We obviously have the game tonight. I was out for half of this, and I appreciate you guys covering for me. But so I want to get to the one rumor, and that is the Patrick Laine rumor, because I was one of those people that really thought that there was no way, and I even said when Drager said the other day, I'm like, come on, Cheveldayoff this is not in Cheveldayoff's wheelhouse to be, like, knowing him as I do, and I knew him really well. Like, he and I were buddies. Like, we would talk all the time, but until he became a GM, at which time he stopped talking to everybody. So he became like Lou Lamoriello when he was GM. I mean, he really got silent. But before that, I learned a lot about him and the way he thinks, and this is not in his wheelhouse to trade Patrick Laine.
But he may not have a choice. That's the problem.
And now that's true. And if the ownership is telling him he's got to trade him because they can't sign him or whatever's going to happen, then yeah, you're right. He does not have a choice, right?
I don't think it's because ownership is telling. Because ownership, they have the richest owner in the entire NHL. He's a multi-billionaire.
Right.
But the issue is you're paying Wheeler over $8 million. You're paying Kyle Connor over $7 million on a new contract. You're paying Nick Ehlers $6 million. You can't pay another winger $9 million. You have nobody up the middle after Mark Scheifele. You need centers.
Unless you move up one of the other wingers. But in this case, we've heard enough buzz with regards to what seems to be dissatisfaction with Laine's consistency that he seems the most likely and the one who's most likely to give you the return you're looking for.
Right, exactly. To me, the interesting thing here, so the rumored deals were this, like, and it was kind of fascinating as the more I dug, what is the asking price, if there is an asking price? And the asking price that I was told was either 2 first-round draft picks and a top 4 defenseman, or 1 first-round draft pick and a top pairing defenseman. Or like basically Eric Ekblad, like, and that was like, like Eric Ekblad for Patrick Laine. Could that happen straight up? Possibly, but I don't. At the end of the day,
they would.
At the end of the day, I don't think Ekblad's going anywhere either.
No, but they would need more. That's not going to get the deal done.
Yeah.
There's risk.
So, but to me, is the 2 first-round draft picks and a top 4 defenseman something that is that fair for Patrick Laine?
No,
nobody's doing that with only a year left on his deal.
No.
Right.
I mean,
you'd have to know you're getting him. Number one, you have to be convinced that he's ready to sign up with you long term.
Exactly.
Well, one of the things I was told along those lines, you guys are dead on right. And one of the things I was told along those lines is that, and I didn't get this again from Winnipeg. I don't get anything from Winnipeg, but that the fact of the matter was that there was a possibility that teams would be allowed to talk to him about that. Right. That they would be able to give permission for them to talk to him about contract extensions. Not like a sign and trade, but like.
Yeah, but that would be how you would have to do it. You'd have to
Yeah.
I mean,
so if you know you're going to sign him, let's just assume that for a second, because I do agree with you that that's a lot to give up for a guy who could just walk away.
Right.
But if you know you could sign him, it's 2 first-round draft picks and a top 4.
I wouldn't do 2. I would do 1 in the top 4. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're barking up the wrong tree with 2 first-round picks. Nobody, unless they have multiple first-round picks over the next 2 or 3 years, would be willing to do that.
Right.
So, the thing I wanted to bring up, that I found interesting is the chatter over the weekend. I'm not sure if you heard it, was that the guys from Spitting Chicklets, which they're not exactly insiders, but I'm sure they have connections within the league.
Everybody's got some connection somewhere, yeah.
Reported that Torrey Krug's rights were going to get traded probably today or tomorrow. Frank Cirelli came out and said there's significant interest in Krug's rights, and that the Bruins offered Krug, and this is laughable. The Bruins offered Krug 6 years at $6.5 million.
Right.
That just proves the Bruins are not serious.
We don't know that for sure. This is what Frank said.
That's a rumor, yeah, and I'm not necessarily buying that.
I question that.
Because here's how the Bruins work in general. That Bruins team doesn't make offers like that. It's not like they put an offer out there. That Bruins team they're close enough with their players, especially guys like Krug. They just go to them and they say, "Listen."
You think that figure comes from that 6.5 comes from the agent then?
That's a negotiation.
If Frank got it, it's got to be from the agent.
Maybe,
but with Frank, it's 100% from the agent.
Okay, right. You might be right, but just think of it this way. We know how structured the Bruins are in terms of salary, and 6.5 is just under what Pasternak makes. So it's conceivable that's what the Bruins offer because they have a structure, and they're not going to pay anybody more than Pasternak.
But the idea is this: the Bruins aren't going to make their offer public. They're not that kind of team. There are teams that do it just because they know.
Not going to make it public, but there's other ways.
But they're not even the kind of team that makes an offer. They go to the player and say, "About all we can do is like 6.5, or whatever." But I'm sure you want more than that, right? And that's where it gets to. That's the extent of it. Like, this is not a long conversation.
They're going to go over the Pasternak threshold. They will, and they know that, and Pasternak knows that. I don't think, and that's why I don't believe in this deal. Because I believe the Bruins are smart enough to know they're going to have to go over that threshold if they want to keep this player.
Now, the four teams that were mentioned in the initial report were Colorado, Vegas, Detroit, and Florida. I don't buy Colorado for one, even though they got all the cap space in the world. They've got guys that they have to sign in the next 2 years, one of them being Makar. And I can't say – now, Ian Cole's a free agent after this year, so that opens up $4 some odd million. But they've got guys that they have to sign, and I just can't see them spending $7 or $8 million on Krug. Right. I just can't.
Yeah, I know they can't. I know they can't do that.
Detroit, Florida, they got rid of Matheson, but they took over $5 million in Hornquist. So they don't. I mean, they have cap space. Are they gonna spend it on Krug? I don't know. Detroit could just simply wait until October the 9th. They don't have to trade a draft pick, unless they're they're 100% sure that they can get them signed, and they don't.
Now the question is the timeline. Was that prior to
October 9th, so for his rights?
No, I'm talking about in terms of going for Krug and Detroit being in the mix for that.
Right.
So what's going on here? We had
no, it's not real. I'm getting a laugh out of it.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Sorry.
So Randy in the chat, you said that did I get your DM? Where did you DM that to me? I'm not in the chat right now because I'm kind of like remote.
No, I don't have a phony deal that's out there. Like there's basically for the rights for Torrey Krug, there's an outlet saying there's multiple players involved. They're not doing that.
Yeah, it's not. Just telling you, folks, that's not happening.
No one's going to trade multiple players for the rights. Aren't there actually new rules anyway in the CBA about that?
No conditional picks in terms
of
So
there's the rights trading, which has always been incredibly corrupt. Is not because sometimes it was we'll give you a second round pick if we don't sign him. That's just talking to a guy early. That's not even a rights trade. Right. You have to give up something for sure if you want to talk to somebody early.
The interesting thing is the Vegas possibility because supposedly Vegas might be in on Pietrangelo, but if Vegas is the team that his rights are being traded to, then they're going to spend the money to sign Krug. They're not going to make a deal if they don't think they can pay for him, and that takes them out of Pietrangelo. So we
had this discussion over the weekend when this came out, Mike. You and I by DM was that if it's Vegas and they get Krug, that's one less suitor that the Leafs have to combat with in order to be involved in the Pietrangelo sweepstakes.
And it also might be a sign that Vegas and other teams don't believe Pietrangelo is going to get to open market, but they do believe Krug is. Maybe they all think that eventually St. Louis and him will come to an agreement.
Hey, you could pull Stamkos here. It's entirely possible.
Right, exactly.
Right. Although there's only a few days left.
The language wasn't good in terms of you could say it's negotiation speak, but it didn't sound good.
No.
So it would have to be a massive quick 180 from St. Louis. I think it would have to be from St. Louis's perspective in this case.
Yes.
They'd have to guarantee.
There's no way he's a quote unquote hometown discount, especially since they have, as you pointed out, Mike, they've been laying down the groundwork for
Yes.
a Pietrangelo divorce for quite some time with the
He
move.
was based on the offer that St. Louis made to him. He was willing to take less to stay in St. Louis because St. Louis could offer him the 8th year and spread the AAV out. It's the problem is the no move clause and the no signing bonus. Doug Armstrong will not offer that to anybody. He hasn't offered to anybody that he has signed. Braden Shen, Tarasenko, no one. So he's not going to break that rule for Pietrangelo.
Like I said before, and talking to Andy Strickland, a bunch of different people involved that they know this thing pretty well. The Blues weren't. It wasn't like nefarious or anything strange or anything weird, and there was nothing like along the lines of like we think you're trying to screw us. It was legitimately along the lines of we don't think that he can get what he's asking for anywhere. And so they got to the point where they said, if you really think you can get that, what you're asking for, then go get it. If not, please come back to us. And I think that's where this sits.
Heck, think about it from these terms. There's only 10 days left, right? And unless the deal is drawn up somewhat, it takes more than a week just to get a deal written up and done in time. So you would have to say, like someone like Markstrom, if they're just haggling over a little bit, they would have to have something mostly drawn up in time because otherwise teams are going to run out of time here.
Yeah.
So a couple other notes. Bill Armstrong apparently is getting a lot of attention from his fellow general managers. Pierre LeBrun reported he's been getting calls on Darcy Kemper and to a lesser extent on OEL. And the reason the lesser extent on OEL is because he's got a no move clause and he's making $8.25 for 7 more years. I don't know. I mean, it's not a boat anchor of a contract because he's a good defenseman, but it's 7 years.
Yeah, that's 7 years. I know. It's,
now, Anthony, Robert Hogg, 2-year deal at $1.6 million.
Yes, that was a 2-year extension for Haig that was announced late this morning.
Yeah.
Again, an expected deal again with him being a restricted free agent. He was, I think, the ARB number might have been 1 point. That could have been around 1.3. So the Flyers gave him a little bit of a minor bump here. Haig again fits in as a number 6 defenseman for the Flyers, a third pair. He does his job. I think he does it well enough. I know he's not as I've mentioned earlier, he's never going to be a metrics darling. He's never going to be a metrics favorite. But ask anybody in that locker room certainly the value of Haig and how, as we watched in the playoffs with the Flyers, were to kind of stabilize themselves at times. It's certainly in the Montreal series, I think Haig certainly helped them out defensively.
Yeah.
He's a good penalty. I think he's a good penalty killing defenseman, good along the boards. And again, a 2-year deal kind of takes Philadelphia through the Seattle draft.
Yeah, he's
and the possibility that might be an attractive number with 1 year remaining for a team like Seattle to potentially take a quote unquote flyer on Robert Haig. But again, this was a deal that wasn't necessarily surprising. And Haig, I think, is a core guy. Well, not core guy, but a guy that the Flyers really do like.
Well, the thing that Haig has, and he has this like throughout the NHL, is there are a lot of Sanheims and those type of players out there. Even though they're not maybe as good as Sanheim, but there are a lot of them. Haig is a unique defenseman right now, in what he does and how much he hits and how he can still move the puck pretty well, but he's not really an offensive defenseman. There aren't a lot of those defensemen. Like defensemen have really been geared towards either all offense or all defense. And he's very much like a swing type defenseman, which is really important.
He's more, defense. I think he's more again at this point of his career. Certainly when he was as a junior, much more of an offensive bent. And he still has flashes of those moments. I think he can get a pretty good zone exit when he gets a good clear lane.
He's a good transitional pass defenseman.
Yeah, exactly. So and then everything else that he does again physically in his own end. Goalies obviously love him for the fact that he's willing to give up the body consistently. And
he's
again,
like the leading hitter on the Flyers every year right now, right?
Yeah, and there's something to be again. He's strong. He gets under other. He's underrated for getting under, I think, opposing forward skins. We've seen it happen where he gets this sort of crap eating grin on his face when he gets under an opposing forward skin. So there's a little bit of an agitation to his game too. So
yeah. And then the last thing I'll say about that, when I saw this today announced on Twitter, I saw the Flyers sign Bobby and immediately went to oh no, they went and got Bobby Ryan. Like that's immediately the thought that went to my head.
Yeah, I saw with a quick look.
And so I just wanted to get your thought on Anthony on Bobby Ryan. Like, what are your feelings on that?
I highly doubt it. I think from Philadelphia's perspective right now, it's just I watched him a bit last year with Ottawa, and I give him a lot of kudos for what he was able to overcome. But in terms of him being a forward, depending on he may get a little bit of a better offer elsewhere, but I think Philadelphia at this point probably looks within their own system. They'd have to probably move somebody off in order to lineup-wise fit him. And again, his speed is not what it was. You need, especially in the bottom four, you need some guys who can give you some, he has to match, I think, what Alain Vigneault's looking for out of his bottom lines, and I'm just not sure he can provide that at this point.
And in the category of the worst kept secret out there, and this is not casting aspersions on the report from Pierre LeBrun, but Shane Gostisbehere is on the trade.
I know, I saw that.
Oh my God!
If you haven't been following hockey for a while,
I think the big difference is now between then. I think in past we've heard enough Shane Gostisbehere rumors for the last several seasons, but it's also been a case of I think this is very much flat. The deal's going to probably happen because it's flat. It very much is flat. I think it's flat cap related. They just can't. In this situation, at $4.5 million for a number 5 or number 6 defenseman, a guy who couldn't draw into the playoffs consistently, doesn't appear to have the trust of Alain Vigneault. When he gets dealt, and I think, and it's going to happen. I think the initial blush of the deal, people may be a little taken aback. I think and it becomes more a case of getting something, but more or less trying to get the cap relief. A little more cap relief for a guy who just doesn't quite fit in what they do now.
And Russ, the market always makes you adjust when it comes to certain situations. And a couple weeks ago, it came out that Jim Rutherford was looking for a first-round pick for Matt Murray. The reports have come out over in Pittsburgh the last couple days that all of a sudden that is down to a second-round pick and a prospect.
Yeah, of course.
Because they gotta pay him. That's why.
I mean, that's what he was doing. And
I honestly think that there's a guy. If I was one of these NHL, if I'm Calgary, I'm all over that. Like, I am all over that because I think that there's a guy, who if he gets, remember family stuff happened with him. He's playing on a really weak defensive team. Like, Pittsburgh is not a good defensive team at all. I honestly think that Matt Murray still has like.
So do I. He's a 26-year-old goaltender.
I mean, he could be. I still have feelings that he could be like the Team Canada goalie at some point. Like, I think that's how good I think he is potentially. And I think
I think the two possibilities, and we've heard, Bill Guerin again being, he's apparently looking on to move on from Devin Dubnyk, and they have a young goaltender, but it would make sense that Minnesota will be in on him. But I will continue until he gets traded someplace else. I will say that Matt Murray is number 1 on Kyle Dubas's list for the Leafs because he was a goaltender for him in Sault Ste. Marie when he was GM of the Greyhounds, and they tried to trade for him 4 or 5 years ago in the Kessel deal. So I'm telling you, if he's out there, the Leafs will be in on him.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, that's all the time we have, guys. Tonight will be fun. Thank you so much. So great to have you, Anthony, again. Anytime you can come on, we appreciate it. Enjoy tonight's game. Remember, I really hope we see you Game 7. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you.